Episode: School, University, and Self-Teaching. Small School, Kleine Schule, Accelerated Program. 7th grade was not good for me. I hated it with a passion. Teachers were slow and clearly not well versed in the curriculum they taught. Every day brought boredom. I would wonder how people tolerated it and learned anything new given how simplistic the curriculum was. I felt like 7th grade was a waste of time, and so my mind wandered, and I would write philosophical ideas down and distill them into one-liners or even slogans of wisdom. Or so I thought. All those things are lost, though, to the waste baskets of time. I am not much of a hoarder, I never was, so most anything that I have is the result of someone else saving it for me that I could have later in life. I forgot I had in some maybe storage bin somewhere out of sight, even if I still had it. Or maybe I acquired it in the last decade and it just fell away when I moved. I wish I could go back in time and keep more things from my past, but that is a lesson that I learned too late in life. Well, I learned of a special program called Kleine Schule, or KS, which was German for small school. It was an experimental pilot education program that allowed students to assign their own work from a vast list of curriculums that spanned science, technology, English, and math, STEM. And it had its own computer and full access to the high school facilities and its library. In fact, Kleine Schule was in a large multi-sectional building in the middle of the high school, and its students could attend any high school class, even though they were so much younger. I was accepted into the elementary Kleine Schule, or EKS program, in 8th grade. I would stay there until my senior year, where I completed everything imaginable in the curriculum, and so I attended random classes in the high school as well, just for the fun of it. While in elementary Kleine Schule, EKS, the education program for gifted students to accelerate their learning through individual study at their own pace, I quickly excelled in the program. It was perfect for me. I gathered the entire year's requirements and set out to complete them as fast as I could. It was like a challenge. It would take me a few months, but I would finish the entire year's work and pass all of its tests in those few months. Kleine Schule normally asks you to graduate to the next grade, then regardless of your age, but I declined, so no one could tell me what to do anymore. I did what I wanted. I said that I wanted to study my own areas of interest, now that I had completed what they told me I had to do. The EKS teachers agreed that it was a fair proposition for me to study ahead if I did not distract others. I agreed. I pursued mostly computers and programming topics. I took speech and debate when I was in 8th grade and stayed in it all the way through my senior year, where I graduated with a National Forensics League degree of distinction and a double ruby recognition pin in addition to my standard high school diploma. We'll talk more on that later. There was an Apple II in the EKS classroom, available to use per a sign-up schedule, and so like everyone else, I would sign up for the allotted times. One day the teacher, Mrs. Rivard, she was officially more supervision than educator. She came to me and said that another student needed the computer and that I should sacrifice my time slot because I was already so advanced I did not need it. I was horrified that I was being punished by losing my pre-scheduled computer time for being focused and working non-stop on my interests. I could not allow that. Well, let me give you some background here. My mother worked then at a company called Shugart, which made Apple II floppy disk drives and hard disk drives. And she had a refurbished one that she gave to me to loan to the school so they could have more than a cassette tape to load and save files and programs. If I could not use the computer, though, that I helped them improve with my disk drive, then I informed the teacher I would take it back. And no one could have the floppy disk drive. The school had no right to my disk drive, and the teacher soon realized her actions had a very unintended and unhappy consequence. The fight with me escalated until she gave me detention. I declined the detention and I walked out of EKS with my floppy disk drive, out of the school, to a bus stop and home. The teacher was flabbergasted, and she called my mother, who supported my position, and challenged the teacher for taking my assigned time away. She agreed that taking the floppy drive was reasonable. I returned to EKS the next day and told my tale to everyone in EKS and in KS, the older schools program, about what happened to me. I evangelized and inspired the younger EKS and the older KS students into a revolt. We all sat at our desks and refused to do any work. We wrote letters of our reasons of hate against the school for what they had done. We sowed contempt and discontent across the school. We went out into the main school areas during lunchtimes to tell the tale of our abuse in Kleine Schule. The fight was for justice. The fight was on. I instilled the fight. Things, however, went terribly bad when the principal and head of Kleine Schule showed up, demanding to talk to the instigator. To me. The KS head wielded a rolled-up flagpole like a weapon to intimidate as he waved it about, yelling at me. I told the KS head to honor the rules, honor the sign-up sheet, treat us like people. Only then will we stop. Only then. Yes, I was quite the rabble-rouser and leader. He seemed shocked with my non-negotiable, rigid vehemence. He left with the principal, leaving us to wonder what might come next. Later that day, the EKS teacher, Mrs. Rivard, came by wearing boards on the front and back like an advertisement with words written on them saying, TGIF, I am sorry. Thank God it's Friday, I am sorry. She then verbally apologized and said that she had made a mistake. Well, I honored my words, and we returned to normalcy the next day, and the schedule was once again honored. While attending Kleine Schule Accelerated Learning Program, and in my senior year, I pursued mostly computers and programming topics, but also pursued speech and debate. I am not sure why I wanted to gain public speaking skills, but something inside me called out. It was like a calling. I took speech and debate when I was in 8th grade and stayed in all the way through my senior year, where I graduated with, like I said, National Forensics League, degree of distinction, and a double ruby recognition pin, as well with my high school diploma. At first, though, I found it was intimidating standing up in front of people and talking and asserting a position that may not necessarily even be my own. Over time, though, I learned from the debate teacher, Mr. Bick, that everyone is intimidated and afraid. He told me that everyone makes mistakes and can look dumb. He asserted just getting out there and doing it at all was all I had to do. Success would follow. He said practice and confidence. That was important. He said that's all it took. He comforted that if people laughed at me, then I should laugh back at them, because they were merely ignorant and dumb and too afraid to do what I was doing. He insisted they would do much worse themselves, but ignorantly, they might imagine that they could do better. But he stressed they were ignorant. Mr. Bick explained that people's arrogance protects them from the truth of their inabilities. I was able to attend a 2-week speech and debate summer program called the Golden Bear Forensics Institute that was hosted by the University of Berkeley for the potential of state and national public speaking championship competition. It was an honor to be invited to the program. Of course, the program cost a lot of money, and my parents worked with the school to find some way to cover the costs because they could not afford it themselves. From candy drives to car washes, all sorts of fundraising activities. Ultimately, I was able to attend the program. The summer debate program was wild. Everyone was assigned a shared dormitory room in the college that is normally used by the university students all year long. I had never stayed anywhere outside our house. Well, I stayed at my friend Scotty's house. I stayed in cars as a little tiny kid. I certainly never stayed in a hotel or a dorm room before. The dorm room was so much nicer than my bedroom or anything in San Martin. We met lots of different people from all over California. Everyone in the group were like me, from different parts and areas, some wealthy, some poor. People came from all walks of life. Like I said, some blatantly had a lot of money, and some were like me, very, very little money. I saw my fellow students focus happily on the material and social activities afforded in the Forensics Institute. I always felt how lucky I was to be there and attend, and saw how it was presumed and expected by so many others that attended. I guess they were entitled, and I was appreciative. I saw no one valued what they had, whereas I valued it so deeply, where I appreciated it as special. And yet to them, it was just a thing to do. They all seemed to be entitled and expecting all things that they would ever want would be provided to them. Such was never the case for me. I don't think it ever was in my entire life. Never. No matter how different my colleagues' origins were, they did all love to play games, like me. So we played card games at night, we played board games, we played word games, we played all evenings until around midnight when we decided we should get rest so we could function the next day. And we could rise and eat and continue to chat as a group. I felt like, in a way, maybe I was making friends, even if I would never know them after the program ended. We had noticed there was an arcade when arriving at Berkeley University. It was only a few blocks from the main campus. A friend of mine from high school that also attended the Golden Bear Forensic Institute joined me for a twilight walk to the arcade in hopes of playing a few games at night. It was a bad idea for two high school white boys to go out alone in the hood of Berkeley, as it was sometimes referred to by the liberals due to its extreme, crazy, liberal, crime, drug-abusing culture. Yeah, a gang of black hoodlums drove up right next to us as we were walking and lowered their window, aiming an AK-47 assault rifle directly at us. And they laughed hysterically and exclaimed that we honkies, which was a derogatory slur against Caucasians, had better dance and run or die. The gangbangers were crazy. It was a real assault rifle. It was no toy. Even in San Martin, I did not expect a drive-by with a rifle. I could only conclude that there was literally nowhere in the world that was safe enough that you could ever let your guard down if at home in the rural and now here in the big urban city, everything was dangerous. I had always heard of racism being inflicted on minorities. I had witnessed racism everywhere in San Martin, from the cowboys against the Mexicans. It was a crude distinction between illegal, undocumented workers and poor citizens often out of work. I had accepted that maybe that was just the way it was, because that's everywhere it was in San Martin. It was typical for me to ride in the back of the bus on public transit and school buses alike. I had no racism in me. I even sat in the back of school classes for the same reason. I did not want to be noticed. I did not want anyone to be staring at me. I'd rather be unnoticed in the back. Never see me coming, never see me going. I just didn't want to be noticed. Well, the Berkeley hoodlum assault rifle incident reminded me of when I was a kid visiting a friend of mine, Scotty Shaddocks, in San Jose. I was riding a public transit sitting in the back of the bus, as I always did. A pair of older black teenagers glared at me and blurted out that I had better get myself to the front of the bus, where I belonged, and I was taking their seat by being in the back. Apparently, racism works both ways. They felt that they owned the back of the bus and that I should be banished to the front of the bus because I was white. It was inane. I told them, no, I'm here. And I left it at that, simple. No, I'm here. Well, it wasn't that simple. The biggest and oldest black boy screamed, honky! A very, again, derogatory term which is akin to the N-word that white people would allege to use against black people. He stood up and he struck me square in the face and left me with my head ringing and my nose throbbing and a little bit of blood dripping. He did not break my nose, but it sure felt like it. I didn't know what to do. They were big. There were many of them. There were two of them. It's only one of me, and I was tiny. No one on the bus said or did anything. They just watched me get punched and yelled at. It was surreal that I was there alone on a bus full of people and no one did anything or cared, not even a word. Immediately I understood. Being with people does not mean that they will help or protect you. You are on your own, even when surrounded by people. You are alone in life. I had no choice but to lug my suitcase, packed with my weekend clothes, to the front of the bus after being punched and threatened. The younger of the two black boys kicked my legs as I walked by, as if I had not already been hurt enough. Ego and body hurt, I sat in my front seat wondering why they were so mean to me. I did nothing wrong. I said nothing. I did not even look at them until they began insulting me. It was hard to see how completely unprovoked they would want to hurt me. Their actions reinforced my innate belief that mankind may well be inherently evil. It was the only thing that could explain their malicious actions against me so unprovoked.